to the Middle East. Now, obviously, Israel is, and the story that is unfolding in Gaza is extraordinary. Israel has now expanded their operations. The Israeli Defence Force says it's attacked 450 Hamas targets over the past 24 hours, including command centres and observation posts. Colin Rubenstein is the Executive Director of the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council and joins me now. What are your expectations of what might now unfold in the Middle East, Colin? Are you fearful of where we go from here?
Good evening, Steve. Look, we're 3 weeks plus into what will be a long campaign to unravel what everybody should understand is an evil, barbaric death cult in Hamas, which has inflicted untold misery, obviously, on Israel and on those Israelis they murdered, 1,800 of them, just over 3 weeks ago, holding nearly 240 hostages, but also on so many of the people of Gaza, which they continue to do hour to hour, day to day, as we speak now. They're effectively holding civilians in Gaza as hostages to their own crazed, fanatical agenda, which is to wipe out Israel, of course, and kill Jews, but they have no mercy on their own people, who they see as completely expendable. And of course, we have to mention their backers in Iran in particular, who have no interest whatsoever in those civilian casualties, but are using a willing Hamas to prosecute their own objectives, which are similar in terms of attacking and undermining Israel as well. So in answer to
the hostage question, sorry, Colin, go on.
In answer to your question, of course, Israel has commenced the second phase of their campaign, which all Israelis agree has the objective of dismantling Hamas, its military infrastructure and its political power. It's ruled itself out of civilized society. Nobody can live alongside this brutal organization. And frankly, no civilian should be inflicted with the tyranny of Hamas, which it continues to inflict on Palestinians hour to hour, day to day, as we speak here. Israel's doing it slowly, as they must. Hamas has turned Gaza into an armed camp. It's a militarized area. They've used their civilians as human shields in every which way, which of course makes it extremely difficult for Israel to prosecute their objective, which they must. Israel is doing everything possible to minimize civilian casualties. They're dropping leaflets, they're giving warnings, they're telling the population to move south. It would be better if some of them were able to exit into Sinai, empty Sinai, to save lives. There's a lot of interest in the Palestinian cause in the Arab world, but not too many countries are interested in taking, on a temporary basis, Palestinians to save their lives, I should add. But Israel, it's waited 3 weeks. It's given these warnings. It's doing everything possible to minimize civilian lives. But of course, the situation that Hamas has put them in and put Palestinians in Gaza in means, of course, there will be and there are terrible casualties, and one can only feel great compassion for the innocent Palestinians that are suffering from this campaign. All the legal and the moral responsibility of Hamas, I need to add. But it's a very difficult campaign for Israel. They'll do it. I mean, if they wanted to eradicate Hamas, they had the option of leveling Gaza. That's the last thing they would do, or they should do. They're not doing that. They're being precise and as careful as they can be. But when you have 500 kilometers of underground tunnels that they have to negotiate, when Hamas puts its command and control centers in civilian areas and underneath hospitals, mosques and schools, and indeed, yes, the Shifa hospital, we have very convincing evidence that is a command and control center of Hamas. It's very, very difficult for Israel to prosecute its campaign, as it must and as it will.
The intervention by 6 former Australian Prime Ministers, what are you hearing back from the Jewish community in Australia about their call for condemning Hamas and asking, they've signed that joint statement. I mean, they've been very critical of what happened originally when those terrorists came across the border. Is the Jewish community in Australia largely supportive of all those PMs, bar Keating, that signed that letter?
Absolutely. Of course, they've demonstrated, great sort of integrity, leadership, and an understanding of what the situation is. They've unequivocally condemned Hamas and its barbaric acts of terrorism, acknowledged Israel's right for self-defense, but also calling for us here in Australia to exercise restraint, respect for one another, and tolerance, which of course is the core of the viability and success so far of Australian multiculturalism. And specifically, they've condemned not only the incitement of hatred, but also the incitement of violence and anti-Semitism in particular, and bigotry of any type. And I think their statement is a very constructive and helpful statement. I think has been very much appreciated, certainly in the Australian Jewish community, and I believe would be accepted and respected by the broad thrust of the Australian population.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Colin Rubenstein, always a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. Thank you very much. Now, still to come on the Chris Kenny program